Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we are going to be continuing on with our Swift programming tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be covering classes in Swift. Now, if you recall from my last video where we talked about reference types versus value types, stack memory versus heap memory, you know that classes are reference types. Now, classes are a way for us to represent an object. So some kind of noun, a person, a place, a thing. So keep that. So keep that in mind. Structs are technically the same, supposed to do the same thing, represent an object, but in a different way. So classes. We can have variables or properties, as they're called, fields, members, whatever. You'll hear all those terms being thrown around. They have constructors and they have methods. We'll take a look at methods later, but for now, we are just going to create a class that has properties. So let's say a person class that has first name, last name, and middle initial, stuff like that. All right, and then we'll create what's called an initializer or a constructor, which will allow us to create our instances of our classes with or without initial values. So let's get started. Here I have a person.swift file in Xcode. And to create a class, we need to use the class keyword. So class person, and then opening and closing curly braces. Inside here, we're going to have all of our properties. So we'll say var first name colon string. All right. Var last name string. And var middle initial character. All right. So now we have three properties. We have first name, last name, and a middle initial. Do a couple new lines. And now we're going to create our initializer. And to do that, we need to use the init keyword. So init. And there are two different ways that we can do this. We can create an initializer that has no parameters, and we can or we can create one that has all of our parameters. We can create both if we want, and we're going to go ahead and create both just so I can demonstrate to you that we can and how to do it. So let's go ahead, and we're going to create the empty one first. So opening and closing parenthesis with nothing in between it. And then we have our opening and closing curly braces. Now, upon first impression, you might think, oh, that looks a lot like a function. And it kind of is, kind of isn't. The initializer is automatically called by Swift when you create an instance of your class. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. But let's go ahead and initialize these values. And we can do this in two ways. We can use the self keyword, or we can just call them directly. we're going to use we're just going to call them directly for now. We're going to talk a little bit about what self is in its own dedicated video. So let's go ahead and do first name equals an empty string, last name is also equal to an empty string, and the let's see, the middle initial is equal to also an empty character. Now, you can see we get an error here. Why is this? Well, that's because an empty string cannot be string cannot be assigned to character. And so we can change this to be character and we'll need with empty quotes in there. All right, so there we go. That's how we can create our empty character. Now let's create our constructor. We've created our first initializer. Let's create our second initializer. This one will contain all of our properties. So init first name string middle initial character last name string, and open that up. All right. Now, here we need to use the self keyword, and that's because we have first name in our parameters and first name in our properties. It's Swift isn't going to know the difference unless we use the self keyword. Now, if the properties themselves were named differently, like how in C#, fields are prefixed with an underscore and stuff like that, it would be a little bit different. But we didn't do that here. We didn't do something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say self dot first name equals first name. Self dot middle initial equals middle initial. Self dot last name is equal to last name. And there we go. That's our class. Again, we'll talk about self a little bit in its own separate video because I think it deserves it. And that'll be in the next video, so stay tuned for that, right? Now let's kind of talk a little bit about how we can actually create an instance of this class. Well, if we save this and we go back to our main Swift, go into Navigator, Project Navigator, we want main Swift. Okay. All right. Now, to create an instance of our class, we can say var person equals capital P person. That's so the name of our class, and then do a open parenthesis. Now you can see Xcode gives us some code completion, and it gives us two options. We can use the empty initializer, or we can use the initializer with our first, last, and middle initials. All right. We'll use our full initializer to start with, and we'll give this a first name of, let's say, Sarah. A middle initial of, let's say, L. And a last name of, let's say, McCormick, let's say. Just a random name that popped into my head. There we go. So that is that's how we can create an instance of our class using our full initializer with everything. Let's create another person. Var person2 is equal to person with just an opening and closing parenthesis at the end there, nothing inside of them. And that works too, because we have our empty initializer. So we're going to save this so we don't lose our work. And we're going to try to access these properties, right? So we'll say var person fname or fn equals person dot, and you can see we can access these. So first name, var person ln equals person dot last name, and var person mi equals person dot middle initial. And then we can say var person2 fn equals person2 dot first name. Let's see. So fn equals person2 dot first name. There we go. Var person2 ln equals person2 dot last name. Var person2 mi equals person2 dot middle initial, like that. Okay, and we can print all the information here with a person fn person mi person ln. We can then do that and modify the variables, or the variable names here. Add a 2. Add a 2 there. And add a 2 there as well. Go ahead and save it and run your code. We can see build failed. What did we do wrong? Okay, it can't find person to in scope. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's take a look here what we got. I see. P. There we go. Okay, let's make sure that we have this correct here everywhere. Okay, now we can try to run it. Still build failed. Cannot find person 2 in scope. Okay. Let's see. My screen reader's being uncooperative again. Alright. Let's see. It is coming from... Okay. Let's take a look here again at what we got here. Okay. Did we have 2 P's? It looks like we did. Let's try that again. Again, build failed. Okay. Okay, let's copy the name just so we can get this over with, right? Okay. Okay, now, there we go. Build succeeded now. And you can see in our console, we do indeed receive the data for our persons. Now, here's the thing, right? The first one does have data in it. The second one does not. Because the second person, person 2, uses our empty initializer. So first name, last name, and middle initial are all empty strings or empty characters. But the first person does have those names. So we see those names. Now, what we can also do, instead of accessing all of the properties and assigning them to variables and printing them to the console, we can do something slightly different. and that is we could have a method inside of our class, but we're not going to cover methods yet. We're going to cover methods after we take a look at self and all that. So hold on tight, guys. We will see you all in the next video, where we will talk about self.